So yesterday was a very, very big day for British politics and for the current state of the government as well as the other parties right now. And that was the Makerfield by-election, which the results of it may change politics for the UK for a long while. And I'm going to be here to talk about what's going to happen now and what some of the things that we can take from this election actually are. So, my name's Alex of Politics, I'm independent and authentic. So let's start off with the results of Makerfield by-election. So, as we know, Andy Burnham and the Labour Party won this election with 54.6% of the vote, which is actually a 9.4% increase in the total votes that they got in the 2024 general election. Now, this was also a higher turnout election than what was for the same constituency in the general election by 6%, and Andy Burnham has been crowned, I say essentially, as the new MP for Makerfield. Now, given what we know about Andy Burnham and given his intentions for if he was to win this election, which is made very, very clear in the build-up to it, we can expect now that there is going to be a leadership challenge from him towards Keir Starmer as he looks to take his job essentially and become the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Now, since the election has happened, we've already seen him moving towards that already, as we have some of Andy Burnham's close sources saying that he wants Keir Starmer to hand over the Prime Ministerial position to him by the end of September. He's also outlined in his victory speech after winning the by-election, his view for the future of the UK and what he wants to achieve, which is, considering he's just an MP now, yeah, he's making that speech, is a big indication that he is going to run for that leadership challenge. So we can expect the Labour leadership challenge run up to the election and then the Labour leadership election over the next few months. Probably we'll see the result of it, I guess, at the end of October, November. So going into the new year, we may or may not have a new Prime Minister. In my opinion, I do think this is all going to happen. Andy Burnham will run and will challenge Keir Starmer for that leadership position, and I think he will win. Judging by how Labour's done in this by-election, having increased their vote share to getting over a majority of the votes cast, it's a big indication that Andy Burnham is particularly popular with voters in the UK, because considering where Labour are in the polls, they're polling behind Reform most of the time, in fact pretty much all of the time, by at least 5 or 6 points, and they haven't won any by-election, whether that's a council or an actual member of Parliament, member of Scottish Parliament, member of Welsh Parliament election so far. They haven't increased their vote share in very, very many places, and they are considerably unpopular. So for Andy Burnham to increase their vote share by 10% and take it over that 50% mark, and then have a 20-point lead over Reform UK in second, then that's a big indication that he is very popular with the voters and that the voters want him to take that position from Keir Starmer, otherwise they wouldn't have voted for him. Because let's be honest, everyone knew that's what he was going to do. The fact that he's got so many votes is a lot of people telling Keir Starmer, you need to leave that position and give it to Andy Burnham. Now, some other things that we can take from this by-election, one of them is to do with Reform UK. Now, Reform UK, for the majority of the polls running up to this by-election, were predicted to be about 3 or 4% behind Labour. And their candidate, Rob Kenyon, was the same candidate in 2024. However, he wasn't very known and still came within about 15 points of winning that election. Now that the full focus has been on this single constituency, and Rob Kenyon has been having all of these crazy big donors and big influencers endorse him for that MP role, he only increased his vote share by about 3 or 4%. Now, this is a very, very bad sign for Reform, for two reasons. One, their candidate was not very good at all. The second he was thrown into the limelight, people were focusing on him, they realised that he obviously wasn't a very good candidate. He had a lot of scandals he'd been through in the past. He wasn't very good on question time, answering questions, and at one point literally just told someone that something, he'd mentioned one of Reform's policies, and then someone asked, how are you going to implement that policy? And he literally went, that's not for me to decide. He wasn't a very good candidate, let's be real. The other thing is that Reform UK completely overstated just how important this election would be to the general public. They thought that they were going to have votes taken off them by Restore, which would cost them the election. They thought that they'd be really, really close. They thought that people wouldn't want Andy Burnham, that people would want some change from the Labour Party, but that wasn't the case. They lost by 20 points. So there's also that sort of feeling that maybe people are realising that Reform might not be the answer to all of their problems. That being said, it's not like they've moved over to Restore Britain either, considering they only got about 7% of the vote, and combining that with reforms would have still put them 13 points behind Labour. So it seems to be a lot of reforms voters that they hoped they would get would seem to have moved to voting Labour instead of Restore Britain. Now, that being said, it kind of shows that Reform UK might be just another protest vote, and the second something important needs to be done, like potentially the removal of Keir Starmer through electing Andy Burnham, a lot of the Reform supporters right now are moving over to Labour to make that happen. So it was a very, very bad night for Reform, considering that everything that they had said leading up to the election just didn't really happen, and they were 20 points behind. That being said, this is now Reform's second by-election in a row that they haven't won, even though they've pretty much gone the entire campaign up towards it saying they are going to win it, and then they've lost it, which might be sort of a sign that maybe people are falling out of, I say, love with Reform, falling out of the idea of voting for them and seeing for what they really are, which isn't great at governing. Another thing that this election tells us is that Restore Britain are completely just an online party. They get hundreds of thousands of likes, they get so many views across social media, they've got lots and lots of followers online. As soon as it came to the election, which they were pretty prominently campaigning for, they only got 7% of the vote. Now, this is weird because throughout the entirety of the election, they were saying, oh, I think we've got a real chance of winning it. We're going to shock the world. We're going to shock the country and shock the establishment class, only for them to get about 3,000 votes out of the 49,000 that were cast. Which, when you think about it, the Brexit Party, after only being formed for 4 months in, I think it was about 2015, they got 5 million votes in the European Parliament elections and elected 29 people. Restore Britain have been a party for pretty much a year now and only managed to get 3,000 votes and come third with only 7% of the total vote, which isn't really a landslide or a tsunami if you really think about it. So there's a lot of issues here on the right, which a lot of people aren't particularly satisfied with them, and they have gone back to Labour. And it shows that there's a lot of confidence in Andy Burnham now to go and take that position from Keir Starmer and go and be the Prime Minister that perhaps a lot of the Labour voters now want. So with all that being said, this is a pretty important by-election that's happened yesterday. With what could happen in the future because of it now, and how it looks, or how the results looked last night, it tells us a lot. It does tell us a lot. But we'll have to see what happens over the next few days. We know that Andy Burnham's already basically launching his leadership bid. We'll have to see how Keir Starmer responds to that, how the leadership election goes, and whether we'll see a new Prime Minister by the end of the year. Of course, guys, my name's Alex on Politics. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed today's video and you want to see some more. I'm going to try and upload more on here. I just haven't had a great deal of time right now. I'm incredibly busy, but I do want to continue uploading videos in the future. But of course, guys, if you enjoyed it, make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.